Hallo und herzlich willkommen zurück zu einer weiteren Folge Chäos at Noah. Und gerade sind wir, ich weiß gerade gar nicht mehr so genau, was wir im Internet suchen. Also ich bin da, also wahrscheinlich geht es irgendwie mit äh, in die Zukunft sehen und dergleichen, der Spaß, also Vorahnung und dergleichen. Anyway, to check whether it was related to precognition or not, I clicked on the thread at the top titled Precognition and Prophecies, Phantasm General. Ah ja, stimmt, es ging um die Band. Es ging um die Band Phantasm und die Leadsängerin FES. Darum ging es, jetzt weiß ich wieder. New Gen 43 and gave the contents a brief skim. User calm your tits everyone, but you go to the content Sunday, those who will enjoy FES Summer's Black Mass, who are letting any of it go to waste, miss out, and you'll be getting the crucifixion treatment. Fuck. And was profit. I read the lyrics, but I still feel like a stretch. The phrasing is vague as shit. There's no way any actual prophecies. If I'm wrong, so have mercy on the crucifixion killer. Calling it precognition or prophecy or whatever the fuck is taking it way too far. This ain't Nostradamus, so how about we just sit back and enjoy the music for what it is? FES stuff ain't bad lyrically, but I would definitely can feel the new gen connection, but everyone always talks about FES. Rip the composer, Ryo. Poor guy is getting no credit. Oh, das kann ich schon. I feel it. Man sollte nicht die armen Komponierer vergessen. Festan Hofo. Festan's lyrics forced me to find the meaning of life. It's a trap. Festats are total shitters. Love my ass off. Weil, eigentlich, DBH, keine Ahnung, was das jetzt heißt. I want to be incited by FES Summer and the chilly voice of hers where she grins a boot into my ass. Ich glaube, das sollte mal zu einem Psychologen. Oder I don't judge. Wenn ihm das gefällt, dann okay, ist seine Sache. Over and over until it feels like my eyes are gonna fall out of their socket. It would feel so intoxicating to stop on the edge right at the last moment and so erotic as I wonder if she will spit on my face or not. No matter what you think, I want FES to just take a knife and cut open my throat. Ending my life, I want to breathe my last breath as she says to me, you are an eyesore. FES dann is my waifu. Take that to the BDSM thread. Also FES is my waifu actually. Stop bumping this shit. This is what you guys mean by new gen prophecy stuff. Or 7 revealed by the light of the moonlit night. Connect the phantasmal paths which lead to this place. Little do they know their screams will soon turn to silence, and repose shall fall upon us as we link hand in hand within the wind. Ah. By the way, I say fuck phantasm. Like, love my ass off the fans attacking. You would think they were all brainwashed. Lol, now you're gonna get it. Don't leak the lyrics, dumbass. What a brainless troll. Those lyrics. Depending on how you interpret them, yep. Immer wie man Sachen interpretiert, they could be seen as referring to the group dive, yep. And yet those lyrics had been released 2 months ago, which meant they hadn't been written after the crucifixion.
これが予知ってこと？
Could it just be a coincidence, or could Phantasm be yet another one of the demon girl's underlings? I read the thread in more detail, only to find out that each of the 3 new gen incidents had all been prophesied by Phantasm's lyrics. However, the lyrics for the song that supposed prophesied the man, child, and crucifixion incidents had not been posted on Ed channel. Apparently, uploading them online was viewed as a taboo of sorts. The philosophy seemed to be, if you really want to know, you just go to the concerts and buy an album yourself. Regardless, there were a great number of people online trying to predict the next New Gen case, based on the songs Phantasm had performed thus far. And apparently, ever since New Gen kicked off, Phantasm's albums had been completely selling out. They had been so successful, in fact, that even the mainstream media had picked up on it. Gothic band boasting cult following rises among the youth of Shibuya. New stories like that were popping up all over the place. The one writing the lyrics was the head singer, FES. Nobody knew her real name. What if FES was actually the demon girl? If she was, it would explain how she had managed to prophesize the incidents literally months before they had occurred. The demon girl was the culprit after all. Also, das ist kein Spoiler, kein wirklicher Spoiler. Ich gebe den Hinweis, wir haben FES schon einmal gesehen während des Let's Plays. Sie wurde schon einmal oder mehrmal halt schon gezeigt während des Spiels. I tried doing an image search, but I couldn't find any good photos of her face. All the pictures were taken by phones during her concerts, and they were so blurry that I couldn't even begin to make out their face.
So.
Das klingt nicht gut. I wiped my sweat-drenched forehead with the hem of my shirt. I was frustrated. I was scared. I couldn't believe anything. I didn't even want to see anything. Several emotions swirled within me, suffocating me. My breathing hadn't even come close to stabilizing this entire time. But even so, I knew one thing for certain. I needed to see FES' face. With trembling fingers, I typed in Phantasm's name and clicked on the official website. Yay. Schön zum Lesen. Nicht. The site was mostly black, decorated only by text of a firm deep crimson color. It was unrelenting in its simplicity, and yet it felt so incredibly eerie and strange. There was barely anything on the site at all, just basic information on their concerts and discography. There wasn't even a single image. There were no profiles on the band members or anything on the song lyrics.
やっぱり犯人だけあってネットに顔写真が流出しないようにしてるのか。
Talk about so. I took a look at the performance schedule and saw that they typically performed about every other week. The next concert was
あさって。
übermorgen, also the day after tomorrow. If I went to it, I would be able to check whether FES was a demon girl or not. But even if I did find out where one and they were one and the same, what would I even do? Report FES to the police? Cry and beg for her to leave me alone? Bring a crucifix and attempt a mock exorcism? Yeah, none of those were gonna happen. I was up against a demon. There was no way in hell an otaku freak like me could come out on top. Problem is, if I didn't, I would die. She would transform my corpse into her newest art piece, and I would be posted on the All Things New Gen site as yet another case.
そんなのやだ。
But if I didn't do something, I would never find out what that picture of me that Shogun had sent one really was. And on the off chance that FES wasn't connected to the demon girl, maybe I could ask her to help me fight against whoever the demon girl actually
だ
was.
けどやっぱり無理だ。ライブなんて行けるわけがない。
I had never been to one in my life. That sort of thing was infinitely beyond my comfort zone. Not to mention concert halls were cramped and dark and noisy and crowded. Just imagining a place like that made me wanna hurl. I was at my wit's end. I had no idea what to do. The chills on the back of my neck still hadn't gone away, and the painful prickling sensation suddenly turned into a burning one. I looked behind me yet again, but like always, nobody was there.
もうやめてよ。
I closed my eyes tightly, focusing on nothing other than waiting for the gaze to disappear. I didn't want to go through this torment for the rest of my life. For all I knew, the gaze would straight up kill me someday.
考えろ、匠。僕にできることを考えろ。
Spaß. Wir gehen jetzt also tatsächlich zum Konzert. Heading in the shadow of a telephone pole, I looked at the gigantic concert hall from afar. After agonizing over it all day yesterday, I had somehow managed to nut up and did what needed to be done. So here I was, gigantic. It was located on a narrow street in Shibuya, beneath the elevated railroad tracks. It had very distinct red brick exterior. The exterior was lit up too, giving off an old-fashioned austere vibe that made it feel as if it had been transported back in time to the 50s or something. To think that a spot like this was in Shibuya of all places. I had no idea it even existed until yesterday. It was only 5 minutes from the station on foot, yet there weren't very many people at all. Every once in a while a train would pass over the elevated tracks with a tremendous roar, and the telephone pole I was heading behind would tremble slightly, but that was about it. Just a moment ago there had been a bunch of what appeared to be Phantasm fans in front of Gigantes. Some of them were wearing outfits so out there I had almost mistaken them for cosplayers. However, what surprised me the most was that there honestly weren't that many of them. Despite being such a huge topic online, there must have been no more than 100 people there. Regardless, they were all inside the building now. The concert had already begun, but since none of the audio managed to bleed outside, it certainly didn't feel like it. My heart palpitations had gone away after I had fallen asleep yesterday, but they had come back with a vengeance the second I'd arrived in front of the venue. It had been so hard to breathe. I've almost thought I was dealing with some kind of heart failure. But I knew exactly why it was so bad. This place was filled with a thick, impenetrable darkness. The demon girl and her underlings could be lurking around any corner. Knowing that, I had been on the lookout for anyone that might attack me ever since I got there. The sheer anxiety and paranoia was comparable to what it felt like going through the Once Volcano dungeon in ASO. Mobs in the Once Volcano dungeon were OP as hell, and it was surrounded by the kind of lava that insta-killed you if you so much as clipped it with your pinky toe. That shit couldn't even be playtested. The amount of times I had died there, holy hell. I wiped the sweat off my forehead with a hand towel and gulped down a gulp of salvia. Right as I did, the door at the top of the stairs opened and the furious beating of drums were from the inside Gigantes for a few seconds. A single guy exited from the door. He jogged nimbly down the stairs and then towards me.
Yep.
I had invited Misumi-kun to go to the venue with me. As I didn't know his phone number, I had been forced to go to school today just to ask him to go. If he hadn't come with me, I probably wouldn't even made it. And even if I had somehow forced myself to go in the building alone, if the demon girl was there, it would be a certified game over. So I had Misumi-kun operate as a scout. I did feel bad about throwing him into the lines of fire, so I obviously hadn't told him about that part. The only people I could rely on were him and Nanami. So I picked the less annoying of the two, Misumi-kun. Oh, was hast du gegen deine Schwester? Die ist knuffig. I even covered his ticket costs, so in a sense, you could say I had hired him for 1,000 yen.
ほらよ、これ CD な。俺自分の分も買っちまったよ。
Misumi-kun handed me a Phantasm album. They were being sold for an outrageous premium in online actions. But I had heard on Ad Channel that they were also available at the concert, so I had asked Misumi-kun to buy one for me. And now that I had one, I had achieved half of the goal I had set out for myself. As for the remaining half...
いやー、予想以上にいいな、ファンタズムって。
Misumi-kun had been acting pretty excited ever since I had exited the venue.
俺、あんまミーハーになりたくなかったんで聞こうとしなかったんだけどよ。今日ちょっと生で聞いただけでファンになっちまった。
The other thing I'd asked Misumi-kun and to do was report anything in particular that stood out about the band members. I knew they would all come out on stage once the concert started, so all I wanted him to do was quick scan the head back to me right after. And yet, despite my very specific instructions, he hadn't come back for a full 5 minutes after the show started. This was probably because he had listened to the entirety of the first song.
特にボーカルありゃマジでいい女だぜお前女見る目あるな
I sighed internally, thinking with the wrong head like usual. Why was I even surprised? So much for I'm no sheep.
どんな人だった？
ああそっか報告ななんか探偵みてえで面白いなそう思わねえ
Nisman could grin to himself and I pressed him again and to tell me about FES appearance.
髪型はショートカットだった
And just like that, there was already huge discrepancy. Did that mean FES wasn't the demon girl? No wait, I couldn't let myself jump to conclusions here. She could have cut her hair, or she could have used hair extensions, or she could have changed it in some other way. It wouldn't surprise me if she had been in disguise when I'd seen her at the crime scene.
スタイルがすっげえ良くてあと背が高かったなありゃ俺と同じぐらいはあるんじゃねえの
背が
And the same height as you? Mismikun and I were about the same height, which meant FES was probably around 170 centimeters tall. Pretty tall for a girl. But I hadn't gotten that impression at all when I'd encountered the demon girl. My memories from back then were hazy, but I still felt like the demon girl had been shorter than me. Yet another thing that didn't line up then.
他には
そうだなアンニュイな雰囲気してたな声はクールってイメージかな結構ボソボソと喋るタイプだった胸のサイズはまあまあでも
Das war auch eine ganz wichtige Information wahrscheinlich.
ああいうのもありだな断然あり
Oh god damn it, every single word he said was completely fucking useless. Then again, I'd only gotten a quick look at the demon girl, so I couldn't exactly list her features. This plan was probably doomed from the start.
いうかよそんなにフェスに興味あるなら自分の目で見ればいいじゃねえかほら行こうぜ
Yep. Misumikun began to push me from behind, forcing me up the stairs to Gigantus. I desperately tried to fight back, but Misumikun was stronger than me. I couldn't get away.
見たいんだろフェスの顔を素直になるって浮気ってのは男の差がだよなたくも大人になったもんだぜ
Oh Mann, ey. Der Typ ist
この前
echt...
一緒に帰ってたメガネの子のことは今夜だけは気にすんなって俺も田中のことは忘れるからよ
Tanaka? What the hell was he talking about? Der Typ hat also schon wieder... Na egal. I tried to stand my ground and fight back, but to my horror, I realized that I was already at the top of the stairs. While it was on only the second floor, if I were to slip and fall, it would hurt like hell. Just the thought made me stop resisting as hard. And in that moment of Victor's entire body weight was sent crashing through the door and into the venue. Also kommt das tatsächlich noch. The second I hit the inside, an explosion of sound blasted my eardrums. I had never experienced something so loud before. Even the pit of my stomach was being forcibly shaken by the vibrations. It was so intense it felt as if my entire body was being crushed to pieces. There were no seats in the venue. Everyone was standing up to watch. They were all rocking their bodies in rhythm with each other, shouting fast, 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 as their fists shot up and down. Still nowhere near the level of a Watergate performance though. The heat was devastating. It made me want to vomit. I might have been an otaku, but I was definitely not the type to obsess over idols or voice actors. Honestly, I hated this kind of atmosphere. I could tell I stuck out like a sore thumb, but thankfully nobody was paying any attention to me. There were so many people in front of me I could barely see the stage at the far end of the room. Just the blinding stage lights and the faint figures of 4 people standing under them. And as I was getting overwhelmed by everything happening around me, Misumi-kun handed me a plastic cup of soda. It seemed like Miss Kun had paid for my ticket too. I would have to make sure to pay him back later. Before I knew it, the song was over. The audience clapped and cheered. Then, having seemingly calmed down a little, everyone brought down the fist. Thanks to that, the road to the stage was finally opened, and I was able to see it clearly. Ich bin der Meinung, in der Serie hat man glaube ich, sogar das Lied noch mitbekommen. I got a good look at the short-haired girl standing in the middle of the stage. She was definitely not the demon girl.
今日はいつもより調子いいわ。声がクリアに聞こえる。世界がとても澄んでいる。
The voice coming through the amp sounded nothing like the demon girl. The Ted said those cryptic words to me. Misumi-kun was right. FES definitely had an aloof vibe to her. Despite her short hair, she didn't feel boyish. She gave off this mysterious aura with a mix of charm, allure, and a hint of distance. And to top it all off, the silver accessories she was wearing all glittered fantastically as they reflected the lights. It felt like I was starting to understand why there were so many threads about her on Ed Channel. In this kind of concert, I had always thought that the band members would be more energetic, but FES seemed incredibly indifferent during the intermission. She was pretty much the exact opposite of the excited audience. Maybe that was just the type of person she was. But it seemed like the audience wasn't surprised by that. They just stayed silent, during the break listening closely to FES words. Cocytus. Perhaps it is that the gate to Cocytus has been closed. Cocytus müsste doch... in Greek mythology it is one of the two rivers located at the entrance to the underworld. The name translates to River of Lamentation. The dead cross this river to enter the underworld. Okay. Daher kannte ich das Wort. I'm sorry, what Cocytus, what language was she even speaking?
世界の均衡は大いなる意志が生まれてから数千年間保たれていた。
The greater will.
でも今それは崩れつつある。とても不安定。だから私は歌うわ。君たちのカオスを受け入れてあげる。
I guess they were a goth punk band, so the band members probably had characters that they played. Maybe it was an easy way to win over the heart of fans. Just spout some random nonsense that hinted that it might mean something, giving it enough mystique to keep people engrossed. Speaking of mystique, FES was holding something strange in hand. In her left hand was a plain old mic, but in the other she was holding some sort of weirdly shaped mic stand. It looked kinda of like a sword. Es ist kein Mikrofonständer. It was shaped so elegantly, it felt sinister. It looked so sharp. If you even so much as gazed it would slice your finger in two. It would hit to as tall as FES, in fact. Komm, zeig mir das Bild. There were also lines of glass embedded into it, which glowed with an ominous blue light. I couldn't tell if it was really a sword or not, but either way, it wasn't half bad as a character accessory, no complaints there. I was strangely captivated by it. Then using only her right arm, FES casually lifted the huge mic stand. And with an underhand grip she swung it sideways. The blue light from the glass drew a white arc with its afterglow. What the hell? That was so dangerous. What if it hit someone in the crowd? That wasn't a mic stand. Could it be a sword? And every night she would use it to cut the throat of some poor audience member of the block to offer to the demon girl or something. Alter Junge. So was this concert actually some sort of black mass organized by a bunch of witches? A fierce chill ran down my spine. Just thinking about it, goosebumps covered my entire body. I should really get out of here ASAP, but the moment I thought that, FES let out a gentle whisper. Komm, zeig mir noch das Schwert. Up next, our third song of the night is Necklace of Vajiran. The crowd let out a huge cry of joy upon hearing that. Ah, ja, da sieht man das Schwert. A moment later, the members of Phantasm all started playing and a second flood of sound poured into my ears. Ah, nee, ich sag noch nix. A thunderous rock came from... oh, das ist der Opening Track. From the speakers. A roar that felt like it was going to blow out my eardrums. How had these people not gone deaf yet, hanging out in the places like this all the time? Obwohl, ich weiß nicht, ob das der Opening Track ist, aber entweder ist das der Opening Track oder das ist der Track für im Main-Menü, der automatisch gestartet wird nach einiger Zeit. Looking to my side, I noticed Misumi-kun was fully into it, pumping his fist in sync with the rest of the audience. The intro ended, FES began to sing, and when I heard the lyrics, I swallowed hard. Oh, schade. Oh, der sieht ein bisschen so aus wie, ne, Dante hieß der nicht, oh fuck, ich häng jetzt gerade fest. Das ist jetzt bitter. Das ist jetzt richtig bitter. Ich habe jetzt einen absoluten Hänger gerade. Das ist sehr bitter. Aus dem gleichen Spiel wie auch Noel Vermillion ist. Ich komme gerade nicht mal auf seinen Namen, leider. Ist ein Beat'em Up. Egal. She was singing the prophetic song that had been posted all over at channel. It was a dark piece that didn't feel the slightest bit of optimistic. Even its melody felt like a religious psalm, and the lyrics definitely didn't help. Ich finde den Sound geil, muss ich ehrlicherweise sagen. Everyone was getting right up at first, but as the song went on, the excitement dropped further and further, and by the end everyone just stood there not saying a word. But that was because everyone was fully lost in the sound. Some of them just stared at FES, completely entranced. There was definitely something about FES singing in voice that captivated people. Even as I battled fear and nausea in the middle of the crowd, I found myself listening very closely to her song, not wanting to miss it. Goosebumps sprang up all over me. For a moment it felt like the air itself had frozen over. Oh, kommt jetzt die Szene? Komm, bitte. Ich möchte ihn noch in dieser Folge haben. The song ended. FES was looking down at the stage, swaying her body from side to side as she soaked in the last echoes of the music. And then she suddenly looked back up, and without even gazing around for a second, she instantly... Komm. Looked at me. And it wasn't like she had just glanced in the general direction of my eyes, or like she had briefly made eye contact with me or anything like that. FES was blatantly looking right at me. I'd even go as far as to say she was staring at me fixedly, as if evaluating my existence, as if searching deep within my heart. Her gaze was all too intense, and yet somehow she seemed a little sad. As she descended from the stage and into the audience, I couldn't take my eyes off her. What was going through her head, I wondered. The rest of the Phantasm members resumed playing, but FES wasn't singing this time. She just wandered about in the middle of the crowd, and then she carried through her jacket off, exposing her sexy shoulders. The previously quiet fans were getting excited once again. Everyone threw their fists in the air as they jumped up and down wildly. They made the ground shake so hard it felt like an earthquake. However, nobody laid a finger on FES. Maybe they thought she was too holy of an existence to be touched. Normally, if a girl with her charisma dove into the crowd, it wouldn't be surprising if they got crushed to death. But it seemed that Phantasm's herd of sheep had agreed to restrain themselves, all abiding by the unspoken rule of do not touch FES. And in doing so, they could feel FES' presence right in front of them. They could savor the fragrance of FES' sweat. They could touch the same air as FES. And that was the greatest joy her followers could ever know. Until this point, I thought that this was just any other performance, but I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw what Fes did next. She casually began to unfasten the belt around her waist, and then she threw it into the crowd. All of her followers instantly reached for it, competing with one another to lay their claim over it. Then, with a sidelong glance at them, Fes unzipped her Miniskirt. Die sieht man auch ein bisschen besser, das Schwert. Her skirt gently, he fell to her feet. Her black sensual underwear was exposed. She seemed to not have a care in the world about her acolytes seeing her in such revealing clothing. Maybe she was high of the atmosphere of the venue, or maybe she in this part of the performance, or maybe she was just an exhibitionist. I had no idea, but her utter erotism kept my eyes glued to her all the same. Fes looked at me once more. Her lips formed a bewitching smile. Da sieht man schon, das D-Sword. Das erste D-Sword, das man... Okay, doch nicht das erste D-Sword, was man sieht, fällt mir gerade so auf. Yo, she's coming over here. Fes' eyes were fixed on me. Never once looking elsewhere, she slowly started approaching, as if she had found her target. Then, when she finally arrived before my very eyes, as if I was her lover, she blew her sweet breath toward me and wrapped her arms around me. Her skin was slightly damp with sweat. The scent and warmth were so alluring they made me dizzy. Her breast pressed up against me quickly and repeatedly rubbing up and down my body. I guess it's true what they say about singing being exhausting, because I could feel her wrecked breath directly on my skin. Ja, daran wird's liegen. Her arms were wrapped around my back, holding me close. Her nails were digging into the nape of my neck, and her fingers were twined around my leg. Shivers ran through my entire body like jolts of electricity. I wasn't able to push her aside, nor could I return her embrace. The only thing I could do was stand still, staring at her with my eyes wide in confusion. Her followers cheered again, but this time the noises they made sounded more like screams. The music played by Phantasm identified. Chants of Fes echoed throughout the venue. Then shouts of do it began to follow. Do it? Do what exactly? In a situation like this, what could they be talking to? I had no idea. Fes meanwhile just kept hugging me in silence. Seeking help, I looked for Mizumi-kun's silhouette in the crowd. But when I found him, to my surprise, he was sharing an intense kiss with a girl in the crowd I'd never seen before. No, it wasn't just Mizumi-kun. The rest of the acolyte boys and girls alike were throwing their clothes off, getting as naked as they do, as the day they were born. Some embraced one another, others placed their lips together, and some were even beginning to do the deed. Hail screams of pandemonium complemented the gluttony of carnal pleasure. Moans, groans, and the obscene sounds of flesh rubbing against flesh prevailed throughout the venue where Phantasm had just performed. This is a black mass. I finally realized this was an obscene feast hosted by the witch known as FES, and more importantly, the sacrifice brought in for the witch today was me. I had been chosen as part... Nope. Was this really what a Phantasm concert was like? I was also beginning to lose myself in the atmosphere. I could feel a hazy mist engulfing my mind. I felt excitement toward what was to come, but also dread. I felt superior having been chosen by FES, but also completely entranced by ecstasy. I thought I was going insane. Like time, the world had stopped completely. Hehe. FES laughed and I reached my ears once more. Even in this flood of sound, I could hear a voice clear as day. What a sexy voice, just hearing the sound of it put me on the verge of fainting. But FES was seducing me into diving further and further into this melting pot of pleasure. Her teeth lightly sank into my earlobe, she let out a sigh right into my ear, and then she whispered, "Whose eyes are those?" Und ich würde sagen, an dem Punkt beende ich dann jetzt diese Folge. Bis zu dem Punkt wollte ich tatsächlich noch spielen mit dem Whose Eyes Are Those. Und jetzt vielen Dank fürs Zuschauen und bis zum nächsten Mal. Ciao.